Thank you, Penny. So hopefully everyone has a handout. So we have 20 minutes, and 20 minutes is not a lot of time. And so your handout covers a lot more than I'm going to cover. And so I gave you that extensive handout because I wanted to make sure that you had the tools or had the knowledge about the various pieces of a certain part of FamilySearch that we're going to slightly touch upon. And so my goal is to hit on 5 of those. So we'll see how it goes. I'm going to do my timer so I can be respectful of my other colleagues.
If you take more, I'm happy to.
No, we want to hear every riveting moment that you have to present. So I'm going to go ahead and set my timer. And so following along with the handout, a part of our work as genealogists is we know we have to prepare. So we got to know a little bit about the individuals that we're researching. You want to prepare by have an idea of what you want to accomplish. So what is your goal? Do you want to just learn the names of your great-great-grandparents? Do you want to learn your medical history? What is your goal? And so a part of that goal is preparing. So genealogy is massive. It can take you a number of years to find information. And so if you're beginning, you may just want to start with an individual, a family line, maternal or paternal, or you just want to focus on a family. If you're already in genealogy, doing genealogy, maybe there's an individual you want to highlight. For me, I'm going back and I'm trying to get more information about various individuals. And one of those individuals is my second great-grandmother, who I'm introducing you to today. Ms. Margaret Maggie, Harris Paget Calloway. I like to put all her names because that lets me know that she got married twice. So that's her life range. And this is just a bit of information about her. So she was born in Morgan County to Eli Harris and Mary Jane. She was married twice in Morgan County, divorced once in Morgan County. She had a total of 6 children. She moved to Fulton and she died in Fulton. The reason why I'm presenting this information to you is because this tidbit of information can lead to a number of records. And so as a part of the prep work, what I like to do, especially when I'm helping a patron here in the archives, is I like to learn the life range dates for the individual so we can create a preliminary timeline or a census checklist. Because the census is pretty much that first document you as researchers are going to touch without, dealing with anything that's in your family archives that's at home in the shoebox in the closet. And so based on her life range of 1880 to 1942, I just turned those dates into the dates that I know she should be in the census. And this can be used as a checklist. And so I have actually found her in all of these censuses. So I have them stored in my drive that you actually saw briefly. But I do have all of these. But I also have her death certificate, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But the other tidbit of information that I got from up here is she was married twice. So that's 2 marriage records that I'm going to be looking for. So I'm going to need to go get those dates. She also got divorced. So I need that date as well. She had a total of 6 children. So the birth years and, the other dates, important dates for those children, I can actually add to her timeline. She moved to Fulton County. When did she move to Fulton County? And that actually represents a very important piece of information I need to know because it's going to inform where I go to look for records about her. Because when she moved to a different county, I now have 2 counties for that particular individual who I'm researching. And then she died in Fulton County. When did she die? We know she died in 1942. 1942, death records are on FamilySearch. I can go get her death certificate. It took me a while. It's funny. This is a funny story. So of course, working in the archives, we always keep all of that information in our head. So we have to know these things because we get questions about it all the time. And so I was sitting there one day thinking about her. And I was like, wait a minute, 2042. We got these death records. Let me go find it. And lo and behold, there it was. So even if you do this constantly like we do, sometimes you just have to have that reminder. And so now this timeline actually, this preliminary timeline can be expanded to include all those important dates, including the 2 marriages, the 1 divorce, the 6 children who was born, as well as possibly the date she moved to Fulton. Because in the different jurisdictions, you might have different records. So Fulton County, I know because I researched it a lot. You have city directories, that's annual. You have the Atlanta Daily World, which is one of the African-American newspapers. So that's another resource I want to take a look at. And so here, I divided the records up into 2 different locations. So I now, for this individual, have 2 research locations. Morgan County, up to whatever time she moved to Fulton, in Fulton County. So those 2 locations are important. And I got to know when she was in each so that I know where to go to look for her records. And so for Morgan County, these are some of the records I want to try to find. Birth, if there are some, marriage, divorce, court records, and newspapers. And some of the same records in Fulton, but I also want to find her death-related records. Look at city directories, as well as court records if there are. All right, so that being said, that's my prep work. And so in the section on your handout, I include 2 resources, one of which is one of my favorites, Midwest Genealogy Center. If you have not visited Midwest Genealogy Center to look at their forms, I implore you to do so because they have fillable PDFs. A fillable PDF allows you to constantly update the information. And if you're like me, you want it all pretty and neat so that you can easily read it yourself. But if you want to share the information with others, you can. And so once you get to Midwest Genealogy Center, you can do a simple Google search. And they have the 6th generation chart, which is a pedigree chart. They have the family unit chart, which is a family group sheet, which allows you to capture information about the family. But they have some other charts or logs that you may want to utilize. I don't use them all. I just use those 2. But one other neat feature about this one is it actually has a fillable blank form for the 1950 census. So if you want to take a look at one of those and you want to use it to capture the information about the people you find in 1950 census, this is definitely the place to go. All right, so show of hands, how many of you have a login for FamilySearch? All right, for those who did not raise your hand, you have homework. Your homework is, if you choose to accept it, is to register for FamilySearch.org. It's a free resource available wherever you have access to the internet, and it gives you access to a ton of resources, some of which we're going to talk about a little bit today. So once you sign into FamilySearch, you're going to see this screen, and we're going to focus on this drop down, the search. So we're going to look at records, we're going to look at images, catalog, books, and research wiki. Okay? So I'm going to go fast because I got 12 minutes. So if I go too fast, y'all let me know. All right, so search historical records. This box right here is going to become your best friend because this is where you start your keyword searching on FamilySearch. Okay? I'm not going to touch it because y'all can go in and y'all can play around with it. That'll be your homework. But what I am going to show you is this down here. So one of the things that I know about Miss Maggie Harris Paget Calloway is that she lived in 2 different counties in the state of Georgia. Now, has she lived in, like, say, for instance, Edgefield County in South Carolina, and she moved to Georgia, that means I have 2 states and 2 counties, okay? But since she is in Georgia, I have 1 state and 2 counties. That's important because you need to learn more about each research location that you have. So if you have 3 states, that means you need to visit 3 state archives, you need to figure out the libraries, you need to figure out what counties, all of that. That's going to play a major part in finding resources about the person you're researching. So you can search by place. So one of the best ways to get to know a resource is to figure out what do they have for your research location. So on FamilySearch, you can do it a multitude of ways. You can go in and click on a map, find Georgia, whatever state you're researching. This methodology applies to any location, okay? But of course, we're in Georgia in the Georgia Archives, so where am I going to go? I'm going to go to Georgia. So once you get there, and there is a more descriptive description or more, there's a description of this in your handout. There are various pieces to this website, including the Learning Center. So they have videos and other learning courses that teaches you how to research this research location. If you wanted to just research the Georgia records, you can come to this place and it helps to narrow your search. But I'm a big proponent of casting your nets wide, seeing what they have first. But then when you get to the point where you have to be more specific, then you go and narrow your research. They also have genealogies that are related to Georgia. They have the browsing collection, the image-only collections. They have catalog material as well. So going back here, and I can navigate back to records. But if you're like me, I use this resource a lot for work as well as my own personal research. And so now I know that I can actually go here and find a collection. And if I type in my state, it actually shows me a listing of those collections. So the interesting thing about this list is to remember to always keep going past the end, because for whatever reason, they have this comma. So this comma changes things. So it's not fully alphabetical. So just make sure when you're looking for your state to keep going until the state changes or the location changes. Because if you just stopped at the end of the first, where it ended with World War II draft cards, you're going to miss a lot of records. And so you can even do like type in Georgia and type in deaths. So if you wanted to see what death-related records they had for a particular location, you could just simply type in that and it'll pull it up. And so this collection right here, where it says, I'm sorry, let me make this bigger. Uh-oh. It's a reactive website, so if I make it too big, it's just going to go down. So this one right here, Georgia deaths 1928 to 43. That's where I found the death certificate for my great-grandmother Maggie. All right. Images. Images is one of these new things that I learned recently at IGHR, the expo. And so if you notice in your handout, I think it's on page 4. No, yeah, page 4. When I took this screenshot, and the numbers are off, but the numbers change. That's the point I'm trying to make. And so as you can see, the numbers are constantly counting, right? So this is the place where FamilySearch is uploading all of the images that they're out there actively collecting. So we might think that all of the records that FamilySearch has to offer is in the catalog section or is in keyword searchable. It's not. You have to check historical images as well. And you can search by location. So if I wanted to search, I just type in Morgan, probably Georgia. There it is. And I click on that, click search image groups. Now there may be some overlap, but there may not be. So there may be some more records in this collection here that are not available when I search by catalog, when I search by keyword. So this is definitely a place that you want to check just to make sure that you're leaving no stones unturned. Speaking of catalog is definitely the place you want to go to learn more about what this resource has for your particular location. One of my favorite searches is by place. And of course, with place, you type in the county. And so just pay attention to how the locations, how the searches are for them, because some of them goes from the country, state to the county. Some of them go from county, state to country. So just pay attention to that. And so I'm going to select Morgan from the list. And I like to do some of my colleagues like to do online. I like to see everything that's available because I want to look at, books in every format. So I click on search and it presents to me a listing of categories. So if you're looking for marriage records, they're listed on the vital records. And so if I'm looking for slavery and bondage, if I'm also, in some cases, it might be listed as minorities. So that's something to also look at. And so once you click on the actual category, it's going to display all the records. And I'm a tab girl, so I will right click and tab so I can keep my original searches. So when I right click, open new tab, I go to this tab and this is the record. And so I'm looking at this, I know for a fact that I can't actually get it because it's a book. But I have a title, so I can go and use another resource like WorldCat or go to Pines or go to my local library or even the Georgia Archives to see if we actually have a copy of this book. But another type of search that is powerful as I was told at the expo, is keywords. So say, for instance, if I want to see the information listed a little bit differently, and now I got to learn how to spell Georgia, I can type it in here and I got a total of 360 results. So when I tested this out yesterday, the next page is full of Calhoun County. I'm not sure why Calhoun showed up, but it's searching keyword in the metadata of all the records. And so, oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. So there's the reason. So it's keywords. So it's giving me a lot of different options. These are books. They're giving me some information that we might have on microfilm. It's just a multitude of stuff. And so if I open one of these, I know this is actually a digitized, it's digital version. So if I look at the catalog record for it, it gives me the title, of course. It's letting me know that it's physical, 2 books, and as well as the call number, which is Dewey. But it also tells me that there's a digital version of this. So I can actually look at this book online on FamilySearch. And that is in the next category that I want to talk to you guys about under search. And you see here, it's also listed up here on this bar as well. But I'm just going to go back to search and click books. So there are over 500,000 genealogy books in their digital library, some of which are not accessible for us, meaning that we're in the public, but if we're on site at affiliated libraries and possibly family history centers, you may be able to gain access to some of the other ones because of contractual agreements. But if I go looking for that same, if I go looking for my location, and do Morgan County, Georgia as my search again, I have over 400,000 hits. But the thing about it is access level. If it says protected or if it says limited permission, I may not be able to see it. But if it's public, I can actually see it. So you might want to not look at all of them, and you might just want to select the ones that have public access. But like this one, cemetery records, Morgan County, Utah. I don't want to do Morgan County, Utah. I don't know anything about Morgan County, Utah. But if I just want to look at all the public ones, I can select it from the access level, and everything that's in this list now should be viewable by me. Okay. So last but not least, the research wiki. If you have not used the research wiki, you're missing out. There is a ton of great resources available in the wiki. There's over 100,000 articles, as you can see here. It has information about locations, various topics, record groups, and all of those things. So if you're curious about any topic, this is definitely one of your resources, a resource you need to add to your toolbox, because it can help demystify a lot of things and you can learn a lot about a variety of topics. On the left, if you wanted to see a listing or see if there are any family history centers nearby, right here, you can click that and you can see a map, and you can search by address to see if there's affiliate, which is the orange, or a family history center in your vicinity or in the research location. Last but not least, and I said a research wiki was last but not least, but I did want to add a bonus. This is the website for the Family History Library, which is the largest genealogical repository in the world. It's in Salt Lake City. It is awe-inspiring. I was like a little kid when I went there the first time, and I can't wait to go again. But one of the great things about this resource is that it has a lot of services available to you, even from where we are. And I have a few of them highlighted. So under services, they have a record lookup service. So if you find a book or you find something and you have a citation and you want to be able, or you want to get a copy of it, and none of the local repositories have it, you can check with the Family History Library to see if they'll want to do a lookup, and then they see if they'll send you a copy of it. They also have learning resources. They have live classes and webinars. But one of the other resources you definitely want to take a look at is, how many of you have heard of Roots Tech? Okay, Roots Tech is this massive, when I say massive, like massive international gathering that they had in person, but they went online during the pandemic. And so they recorded a lot of those videos. This is a vast resource. So just think YouTube, but only genealogy. That's what this resource is. So you don't have enough time in your life to go through all of them, but just do a search and see if there are any videos by your favorite presenter or on a topic that you're interested in that you can learn, you can look at. And then a learning center is also another great resource to learn various things as well. I made it, I can't believe it. And last but not least, I keep saying that, the Family History Library also offers online genealogy consultations. So if you have a question about methodology or you just need help trying to find something, you can set up a consultation with them via Zoom to have a conversation. Because, you know, sometimes with genealogy, it's a solo endeavor, unless you have some like-minded people, you know, in the genealogy group or whatever. But for the most part, people really don't want to sit there and listen to all your research issues. And so maybe they can help you with some research guidance. Okay. All right. So you got a lot more, like I said, in your handout. Hopefully it will be useful. And so with all that being said, are there any questions? Yes, ma'am. To the Family History Library? It's under research help. It's on page 6 of your handout. It's a very, very last item. And so you actually can get to it from the research wiki, hit Family History Library, under research help, online consultations. The research wiki is an option from the main page, which, let me go back here. So at the top where it says search, it's the last option. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, that's the research wiki. That's a good question. I'm not sure. I would think no, but if you find a book, you can check WorldCat or Georgia Pines, because you know Georgia libraries are not a part of WorldCat anymore, or you can check us and see who has it. Well, we don't do interlibrary loan either, but check with Pines. So you may have an option to finding it that way. Huh? Yeah, they do. That's what Georgia Pines is like the huge, yeah, Georgia Pines is the statewide public libraries. The only ones that are not included is probably like 6 or 7 big systems like Fulton, Gwinnett, Cobb, DeKalb. I think Columbus is not a part of it either. And so for those, you just have to search their catalogs individually. All right. Any more questions? All right. Right. That's the resource lookup, I'm sure. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Thank you.
An excellent presentation, Tamika. My name is Hendry Miller. As Penny said at the top of the program, I'm the collections manager here at the Georgia Archives. And unlike my colleagues, I wasn't as prepared, so I don't have a handout for you. So I'm very sorry about that. So I will mention that if there's anything that you have questions about in my presentation, you can write into our Ask an Archivist, and my colleagues will direct those questions about the Georgia government publications to me, since I'm the one who put all this information out without having a handout to go with it to give you some helpful hints of getting back to it. So my portion of the program, I want to talk about a resource called the Georgia Government Publications Database. This project is part of Galileo, which is the state of Georgia's virtual library program. The Georgia Government Publications began in the 1990s as a digitization effort to go back and digitize state agency publications. And then they redesigned the project in 2009 to serve as a home for what we call born digital records. So the publications are now just digitized from the start. And so Georgia Government Publications has both ongoing state reports that are born digital that are just published as electronic records, and they also have all the records that they've digitized up until this point. So I'll show you how to get there. I'm going to close some of Tamika's tabs out. The best way to get to the Georgia Government Publications, there's a lot of ways, but if you go to our main page, the Georgia Archives main page, which is georgiaarchives.org, and I'll make the screen a little bit bigger. And we're going to go to this research drop-down menu, and then it's going to be the first item, search our collections. And so this is a useful page for most everything that you might want to search relating to Georgia or the Georgia Archives. And you're going to scroll down a little bit to this section that's called Other Government Records Available Online. And it's this second to last one here, the Georgia Government Publications Database. And it'll give you information, a little bit of information about it. And then once we follow this, it'll take us to the website. And so once you're here, it'll give you a little bit of an overview of what Georgia Government Publication does. You can find out more. Again, let me make the font a little bit bigger. You can find out more about the project. There's frequently asked questions and help, search help. If you get to this database and you're having a little bit of trouble navigating it. So. But if we go back to this home screen, what we call the landing page, there's a handful of links on here that are helpful right from the start. One of them is what's called the picture book, which is, it contains information about Georgia state senators and representatives. And they have that as part of a collection. So if we follow this collection, it'll show us it's got various titles throughout the years. So members of the Georgia State Senate, members of the Georgia House of Representatives. Sometimes this publication has both houses in one publication. And if you can see here, they've got first session and second session of the 2015-2016 term. That's in case, one of the elected representatives took a different office in between the terms and they had to fill the seat. And so there's just several results listed here. And what you see is this is the link to where you can actually open up the scanned or published, born digital document. So if we look at the members of the Senate 2015-2016 first term, you click that link and this will take us to what we call the information page about the publication. This will tell you how many pages are in the file, the author is the Georgia General Assembly. It'll tell you the type of file that it is, so it's a PDF document, 47 pages in one PDF document. And so then to actually see the document, you'll click this link that says View Document Images. And this opens up in a new tab, a new browser tab, like Tamika said she preferred to do that. This one just does it for you. So when you look through this, it opens up in a new tab. Some of the records that are on here are very large PDF files, so it may take a few moments for things to download. And so if you're like me and you suspect that your internet service provider isn't actually sending you as many gigs as they say they are, it might take just a moment to open this. But 47 pages generally open pretty quickly. And so this will give you a little bit of an overview of the members of the House or Senate. It'll give you some information about what counties are in each district, and you can scroll down, and once you get to it, you actually see, you know, a little bit of information about the senator. So their Honorable Lester Jackson, a senator from District 2 in Savannah, and it also tells you what committees they're on. And so once you're done with this, since it opened up in a new tab, you can just close this out when you're done. So you'll close out the tab. And then to get back to the results page, so if you were trying to find out if a person was an elected member and he or she wasn't in this version, you could go back to the results page and just check other years. Some of the things that can be a little bit frustrating about this is you see that the date range, you can narrow it down. There's 5 years listed. Sometimes it'll show all of them, but see it only goes up to 1986 or down to 1986. But if you see here, there's 85 total results in this collection. So what you can do is you can scroll all the way to the bottom and you can tell it how many records to display. So I always like to display as many as possible. So if I was looking for somebody in the 1970s, I could just display, if I'm displaying 100 total and there's 85, I can scroll all the way down, and here we are into the 1970s, and we can view the item images. And this one's going to have both state and, House of Representatives and Senate together. And then we can scroll down a little bit and see some of the hair choices, hairstyles from the time period. A lot of the pictures aren't necessarily great, but people will contact us and say, I'm looking for any images I can of this person. And if they did serve in the House of Representatives or the Senate, this could be a resource for them. Some of these are what are called OCR, optimal character recognition. So basically it means it's word searchable. Some of these aren't. So this one we wouldn't be able to do word searches for. Other ones that will pull up, you could. So if you were looking for a certain person, once you get the document loaded, you can type their name in and find it. Let's see. You can also adjust how it sorts. Usually it just sorts by the most recent, but you can change how it sorts, sort by the author. You can see that there's two different authors for these. Some of them might have been Georgia Secretary of State. Some of them are Georgia General Assembly. But you could search by author, or you could search by the oldest first. Even though it is called the picture book, they didn't actually start publishing pictures until the 1960s. So the members of the legislature, 1913, 1914, is just going to list the members of the legislature there. So that's a good first one to start, and we can get back to the main page by clicking this home button. Other useful tools, state government publications that are linked here on the main page. There is the Journals of the House of Representatives and the Journals of the Senate, and both of those are 1876 to the present. So if you were doing any legal research or legislative research, those the journals are pretty useful. If you were trying to track down, like, oh, I know that this notable community member had a House resolution passed that celebrates them, you could track them, those resolutions down through the House and Senate journals. Let's see, another useful one that's right here on this main page is the Georgia Official and Statistical Register. Now this takes you to the Digital Library of Georgia's interface, so it does change the interface a little bit. But the Official and Statistical Register, it was published by the Georgia Archives, and it contains biographical information and information about how the state government is organized. And then particularly useful is the 1977 to 78 version. We can scroll down and find that here. This contains a roster of all of the elected representatives from each county from 1777 up until that point. So people who are looking to see, was this person in the Georgia House or Georgia Senate? We think they were in the 1880s. They can go to this publication. You have to click it a couple times to get it to load. And like I said, this is going to be one of those very large documents that's going to take a moment. If you see up here, I know it's kind of small, but there's 1,985 pages to this. So this will take a few moments to load all the way. But as you go through it, there'll be information about the state elected officials, state agencies, and then this roster of the legislators, 1777 up until that point, 1977, 78. And then the 1989 to 1990 version fills in the gap between 78 to that point. And then the picture books sort of pick up from there. So those are some of the resources that talk about state government. And as you can see, that was still loading. So we're going to get back to the Georgia Government Publications website. One of the more useful things, well, we'll talk about searching in general. The search function in this database, unfortunately, isn't quite as intuitive as a Google search. It's just searching across all of the information in there. And so the default is this keywords and text. And I was playing around with it a little bit just to show some of the unique things that comes up. Ben Fortson was the Georgia Secretary of State for a very long time, up until the 1970s. The previous archives building was named after Ben Fortson. So if you were interested in researching Ben Fortson, you might type his name in here and click go. And now we see we have 1,713 results, and everything that comes up is the Farmers and Consumers Market Bulletin, which, according to this database, is the most prolific and important state publication that ever existed. And while it's a very interesting publication, oftentimes it's you know, I guess just because they have so much metadata in there, it comes up so often. So what we found oftentimes is to narrow it down to a title search or an author search. So if we type in Ben Fortson and narrow it down to the author search, we find a publication that he was, you know, as Secretary of State, was the author of. And now, you know, this is Archives and Genealogy Day. One of the more useful tools that we found for genealogists are the death indexes, and then also available here are the marriage and the divorce registers. And now, like Tamika showed you, FamilySearch, the Georgia Death Index is available, searchable on FamilySearch, but sometimes the things aren't quite indexed by the name that you knew somebody by, and sometimes it is good to go to the published death index. And now here's another example. If we type in death index, use it as this keywords and text search, we're going to get all sorts of different things. Amazingly, the Farmers and Consumers Bulletin wasn't one of them. But if we change this to title, type in death, if I can spell correctly. This brings up the 80 death index registers, which are available from 1919, when the state of Georgia began issuing death certificates, up to 1998. And if you click on one of these, the author listed here the Georgia Department of Human Resources Division of Public Health Vital Record Service. That is the author of the death indexes, the marriage registers, and the divorce registers. And so if you need to get to any of those, if you just look up the death indexes, then you can click on this author and it will bring up the 154 results that include the marriage indexes and the divorce indexes. Now, unfortunately, the marriage registers and the divorce registers aren't as comprehensive as the death index. They are only available 1964 for the marriage registers up to 1998. And then for the divorces, it's 1965 to 1998. And this also lists sort of a unique way that they have what they call the county codes. And those will be useful in finding out if you find somebody and you need to know which county they were married or passed away in. You can look at these county codes. And I want to open them in a new tab just so you can see they have them kind of presented in a unique way.
They actually microfiche?
These were, yeah, these were from microfiche. They're scanned from microfiche. So this is interpreting the codes on the Georgia death register. And I'll pull up an example of the death register to show you what we mean. So that's divorce. Death indexes from 1996. And these are, like we said, scanned from microfiche, so there may be some blurry images, and we'll just do our best, and I'll zoom in here. I want to skip to the middle just so the people with the last name Aaron don't get picked on. See what name group we're picking on here. Looks like Goodwin. Goodman. Okay, so this the death index register tells you the name of the person. Goodman Annie M. Passed away on June 11th, 1996. Race black, sex female, county of death Toombs. And then this is the certificate number. This tells you the date that the certificate was filed. And then here in this age category, it says 492. So that's kind of confusing. You say, surely she wasn't 492 years old. And that's why these codes are helpful, because I guess when they input the code, if there was, a young person who passed away before they made it to 1 year, their code starts with a 3. You can see that here. So any person whose code starts with a 4, it lets you know that they at least made it to 1 year. And so instead of her being 492 years old, she had made it to at least 1 year and then had lived for 92 beyond that. And then oftentimes, so that it shows county of death, and then here is where they use the county codes, the county of residency. So this would be in case somebody was not, passed away in a hospital, not in the county that they were living in, which can give you some genealogical clues. And so, like I said, there's also marriage registers 64 to 98 and divorce registers 1965 to 1998. And that's helpful if you need those records. Those records are held by the county courthouses. And so if you needed, I'll get you in just a second. If you needed a copy of one of those certificates, you would need to know the county that a person was married or divorced in, and then contact that county to see about getting those records. So I think that I've probably gone on a little bit longer than I intended to. I have the trouble editing myself sometimes, so I'm sorry about that. But if you do have any questions about any of these things, I'm sorry I didn't have a handout, but you could write into our Ask an Archivist feature on our main website. And we had a question back here. Okay, let me see if I can make it better. 4 represents years.
She was 92. That's how old she was. So if you say
See,
492, just think 92 years.
if you notice, most of these ages are 4, that means years. So that's the first code before the number of years.
Right. So 492 is 92 years. 476 is 76 years.
And just an example of how these are helpful, there was a patron who called a few months ago who was trying to find their sister had passed away as an infant and was trying to find her death certificate. And on the searchable indexes, it was indexed wrong. They had misspelled a name. And so she was having a very tough time with the Vital Records Office in getting that child's death certificate. And so once we went to the this publication, she was able to sort it and get a death certificate number, and then was able to provide that to the Vital Records Office. And so that sorted some things out. Go ahead.
Can you tell me the title of that that part release that it is? I think it's a Georgia official, and it went from 1777.
That's the Georgia Official and Statistical Register. And if we go back, you can do a Google search for that and follow a couple links, but there's also a link right here from the Georgia Government Publications main page, and it will get you to it. All right, thank you. I'll go ahead and turn it over to Kayla.
Thank you, Hendry. I'm going to be talking about what our latest online service, which is called HeinOnline. If I can get to the bookmark here. Just do. This is a subscription service to current and, more importantly, historical legal publications for legal scholars and lawyers. And we've talked in other sessions about the importance of being able to look up laws that might have affected your ancestors to get some kind of context for what's going on, or in laws in which your ancestors might be named. And we thought it would be great to have access to these resources for other states besides Georgia. This is only available at the Georgia Archives. To make this available to the public would have cost 10 times more than the subscription that we're paying for. But the funding comes from the R.J. Taylor Jr. Foundation, and these HeinOnline consists of scanned publications. That's important to remember. They have found the publications of historic codes and laws and scanned those and made those available online, and also used OCR, character recognition. Now, this database employs commonly used legal terms or short titles for these publications that aren't necessarily familiar to anyone outside the legal community. So I have a little handout for you here with those shorthand names and what they refer to. I am going to focus here on a couple of the collections here that I think are most useful to genealogists. And I want to stress, just as you have seen with these other two databases that we've talked about, that there are many different ways to search this, many different ways to go about it, and there is not one right way. Just find a way that works for you. You can browse by category, or you can browse by database name. And what we have is a package called 50 States Content. If you then expand this journal U.S. state contents, what you are seeing are the same databases that you have down here. So you can go to it one way or another. The session law libraries, those are the laws passed by the legislatures of every state that are published every year or every legislative session. Not necessarily every year. For example, in Georgia, the legislature met only every 2 years. So that's just something to keep in mind. But this is a collection of all of the session laws, the laws passed by the legislatures in each state. The other resource I'm going to talk about are the state statutes, a historical archive. And these are historic codes. They are digests, calendars of the laws that were passed by each state. Not necessarily the same session laws, because a law might have portions that go to different sections of the code, but the codes generally organize laws by specific types of laws. Such as criminal law, civil practice, probate, marriage, that type of thing. So that is one important distinction. Some of these others, the state reports are the Supreme Court opinions of every state Supreme Court. Some of these are not complete for every year, but they do contain the historical reports. And let's see, in addition, state constitutions illustrated. I'll talk more about that in a minute. If I click on session laws here, and again, you can get to these in several different ways. You can get to them by title. I would not recommend, at least when you're starting out, doing that, because as you probably saw from the Georgia Publications database, legal publications, and especially in the 19th century, have extremely convoluted titles. And if you try to search by title and you don't know the keywords or the titles to search from, you may not get the results that you want. So at least initially, if you click on state session laws, you do get a list of the states and you can drill down by state. And I am going to, this quick session law lookup, where you can search by chapter, year, and the act, or by page, year, and page. Often legal citations have it's the citation in legal publications to a specific law book and page, and it's just a quick lookup is what this is for. I'm going to look at Alabama, and you can see they have the session laws in Alabama to 2017. For most states, they have to 2020 or 2021. And they go to 1819. I'm looking at Alabama because I want to do a search for a divorce that had some impact in Georgia. And I've talked about this in other sessions. The case was Bedford Head versus Amanda Head. And what happened was that they were living in Georgia, and Amanda Head left her husband and went back to her family in Alabama. And he sued for divorce. That divorce went to the Georgia Supreme Court, where it was denied him, with the court ruling that abandonment was not sufficient cause for divorce under Georgia law. And so he didn't get his divorce. Now, that I think was probably something of a thunderbolt, because very soon after that, within the next year or two, the Georgia legislature went and amended the divorce code for laws for Georgia, and then specified what was grounds for divorce legally in Georgia, which they had really not done before. It was very broad. Now, we know that Amanda Head did get a divorce in Alabama, but my question is, well, when did she get that divorce? When was it final? If she did that in Alabama, when did that, and then she remarried after that. I can do a keyword search, but I can also go to an advanced search here, but be careful with the advanced search. It does give you more options, but the default up here is search the session laws library. So even though I was in Alabama, now I'm going to be searching the entire database, but I can narrow it down by state. This is the one place within the advanced search where I can narrow to state. I'm going to search her name, I think. And I'm going to narrow it to Alabama. And this is also the one place where you can narrow by year or year span, date span. And I'm a little bit different from Tamika. I like to be more targeted in my search until I can't find, unless I can't find anything, and then I want to broaden it. So I'm going to, and everybody does this a little bit differently. I'm going to search 1845 because I know that's when Bedford Head's case was going on, so she could not have filed before then. And just for the fun of it, I'm going to search 1850. And I have here just 2 hits. So that was very targeted. You have a little preview of the text that your keyword search has picked up. And then you can, if you have more than one, you can look at those previews and see, well, is this really the portion that I'm looking for that has the information that I need? You can go directly to the page for that hit. And you'll see here that unlike Georgia government publications, they have many different PDFs for the different laws so that you're not having to download an entire 2,000 page volume, and it's much quicker in that sense. I'm going to enlarge this. Maybe there. And here at the top of this page, that Amanda Head be divorced from her husband, Bedford J. Head, pursuant to the decree of the Chancery Court for the 16th District of the Middle Division of said state in the May term thereof, 1847, and this law was approved in March of 1848. So that tells me exactly what I was looking for. Her divorce became final and she was able to remarry after March of 1848. But you see also there are other divorces here. It's not specific to her. And so I'm wondering, well, how many divorces were passed in this law? And I can navigate either by scrolling up. I can navigate either with the back arrows or forward arrows, and you can see each of these 2 pages have a number of divorces listed here. You can also, and I really like this feature, all of the page numbers are here, and you can go directly to the page just by scrolling down of what you're looking for. And yet another one. I'm going to go back one more. And here is the beginning of that act. So you have 4 pages of divorces here. What this is an omnibus bill passed by the Alabama legislature for all of the divorces for which there was a court decree in 1847. And then that was the final act to make the divorce final. And then if you want to know why did this have to go by the legislature, you can look either in the codes or in this case, the state of Alabama Constitution, in that state constitutions collection, which states for the Constitution in effect at that time that the General Assembly has to approve all divorces by 2/3 vote in both houses. So not easy to get a divorce. You can then go back and one advantage to us, even though we are glad to have the laws of every other state, this does fill in a few gaps in our own collection of the paper copies that we just do not have. So now, great, we have access to these. For example, the 1818 laws, we don't have the book. Why would that be important to us? Well, the act for the 1820 lottery that authorized the lottery said which counties, which lands formed the counties, authorized the survey, how that was to be done, outlined who could draw in that lottery legally. That's in that 1818 law. So we now have access to that since we don't have a paper copy, and I can do lottery, Georgia. I'm going to pick the session laws here, and then I'm going to just 1818. And I just have one hit, and that's exactly what I'm looking for. These can be downloaded as PDF files. If you happen to have Adobe, you can edit those PDF files and take out the pages that you don't need just for a particular law. So it's a great advantage to us, and there's a lot of flexibility with this. to look at the state statutes, I am going to look at the states again, and I'm going to look at another divorce law for which I have a personal interest in Kansas. Now, I know that my great-grandmother, her husband deserted the family, and that I found out from Find a Grave that she did obtain a divorce, which apparently my family knew, but they didn't tell me. And I was just curious, knowing how the divorce laws work in Georgia, how long did she have to wait after he left her before she could file for divorce? Because usually the abandonment has to be a certain number of years to make sure they're really gone, they're not coming back. That's what I want to know. And I know she got divorced in 1893. So I can look here at these different codes that were published over the years. Here is one in 1886 and 1897. I'm going to pick the 1886 law code to see what the divorce laws were in effect at that time, which probably would have affected her filing. I'm again going to use the advanced search. And narrow it down here. And I have more hits than I had in my other two searches. And I can look at the little preview, and this doesn't look exactly like what I'm looking for. And this is actually, it's picking up on the index, the terms that are in the index. Here on this third hit, I have Article 28, divorce and alimony. Well, this looks like the beginning of the entire divorce code in Kansas that's published in this version. So this is what I want to look at the very beginning. That's exactly what this is. And the very first section in this article is the causes for divorce. I'm going to enlarge this. First, and it's very succinct. First, bigamy. Second, abandonment. 1 year. So I know he had to have been gone at least 1 year before she could file for divorce. That answers my question right there. If you really want to know more about the divorce procedure in any state at any time, you can go through that entire digest or code section to see. Here is another interesting tidbit about residence. How long did you have to be a resident of the state before you could file for divorce? In Kansas, it's 1 year. And in addition, you had to be a resident of the county where you filed a petition. So all of that is useful information for some of your genealogical searches. If you know where the divorce took place and you want to know more about the legal process for doing that, we now have the codes for you to search that. You can search the divorce code in every state. Okay. Another thing I want to point out here is that the indexes are also in here. Sometimes if you can't find the terminology that you're looking for with your keyword search, it is helpful to look at the index, because sometimes, especially in the early codes, the vocabulary just is not the same as what you would use now. So look at the index and see if you can find it that way. And a little bit of practice with the index, then you have an idea then of how that's going to be indexed, what the terms are going to be. And the other great advantage of this with the index is that if I, limitation of sales to administrators on page 9 here. Let's see if this is going to work. I can go directly to page 9. Yes. So it's very easy to navigate these PDFs. So, and we've already found a lot of uses for this. Let's see. And again, you can go down all kinds of rabbit holes with this tool. If you are interested in laws about for persons of color after Reconstruction. You can search that by individual state. You can do a general search over more states, but you're going to get a lot of hits and have to go through those very carefully. If you're interested in the slave codes, there has been interest in that for various states. You can do that as well. Probate in any state. You can research what was the law at a specific time if there is a specific probate case that you're interested in a different state. So again, this is only available here. If you do have problems with navigating it or knowing what to search, just ask us and we'll be glad to help you. Any questions? Yes, it's available on the start page here on every terminal. Yes, ma'am.
Have you ever find anything in HeinOnline?
No, not pertaining to Georgia, because all the laws passed relating to Yazoo were destroyed by the governor who was elected 1796. Actually, you might be able to find some. I take that back. There's some books on that, but if I go to,
And just for those not be familiar with that, that was the exploration to
that was not a land lottery. It was not an organized land lottery, but it was speculation of land from the Georgia border to the Mississippi, which Georgia claimed at the time. And sorry. And there were several land companies that were formed to sell land cheap to speculators who then were hoping that they would be able to sell it at an inflated price later on. A lot of people lost some money in that, a lot of money. Now, as far as the laws go, there are 2 digests here. And also here, these are the titles, but I can quickly switch to state. Okay, there are 2 digests of the earliest digest, Watkins and what we call Marbury and Crawford. I believe I've got this right, that it was Watkins that did publish the laws related to Yazoo. You may not necessarily find it in the index, but he did publish them, which so displeased the governor that he withdrew his authorization of this particular digest, and they commissioned Marbury and Crawford, which did not include Yazoo. I think I've got that sequence right. I think it's the later one that has no Yazoo land laws. If you were to look at this, you looked at the index, I'm not sure that you would find anything under Yazoo. You might, it probably under land would be the index term. Oh, I didn't want the, why am I getting the whole thing here? Okay, yeah. I'm gonna go all the way to the end. I think I downloaded this and I didn't need to, but it downloaded quickly. YZ. No, there's nothing under Yazoo, so you would have to probably look under land or another index term, and it's not going to jump out at you as Yazoo land fraud because that's a more of a later term that was used, not at the time when the laws were formed, if that makes any sense. Okay, any other questions? Okay, I think we're done. Thank you so much for your time and attention, and we've enjoyed having you here, and we have 35 minutes if you want to do some research in the reference library.
Good.